Gebhardt.
Here.
Marquis.
Here.
Myers. Sargent.
Here.
Sweeney Moran.
Here.
Zis.
Here. Thank you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'd like to remind everybody that the mission of the Boulder Valley School District is to create challenging, meaningful, and engaging learning opportunities so that all children thrive and are prepared for successful, civically engaged lives. We also apologize that we're starting a little bit late. We just got out of a meeting with the Louisville City Council where we had the opportunity to share some of our initiatives with them and also identify some possible areas where we can learn from each other. We have been meeting with all of our city councils across the district. There are several, I think there are 6, and it's been a great way of learning about each of our work and seeing how we can all do it better. So, and the other thing I wanted to bring up, we talk a lot, there's a lot of division and a lot of talk about public health that seems to be the focus of this board, but I just want to point out that we've had some really great work done with the board and a lot of great presentations. In the last month, we spent time learning about community schools, which is a model that we'll be pursuing to provide more robust supports on-site for students, including deeper mental health, more instruction, and family partnerships. We had a good look at the work and the progress on our instructional infrastructure and exactly how that's progressing so every child has the same high expectations of what they're learning in the classroom every day, including a deeper look at the MTSS, used to be known as RTI interventions. And also we had a presentation on where we are with mental health. This is a top of mind concern for all of us as parents and community members. What are the partnerships we're looking at? Where are we expanding? And I just want to throw that out there because I feel like sometimes the attention is swaying away from the real work that excites me as a board member. And I know our staff, this is what we're here for. So if you miss those presentations and that is your passion as well, please go to board docs and look for the recordings of those meetings. There's really some fantastic work going on in this district and some great information. So at this time, I would like to make a motion to approve our agenda for this evening. By Kathy, second by Kitty. Laura.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gebhardt.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Sweeney Moran.
Yes.
Zis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so we'll start with the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Board President Marquis, board members. A few things to update our community on. If you didn't realize it, Sunday is Halloween. So just ask our community to just keep your eyes out for our little ones, our trick-or-treaters during this week and weekend. Make sure that we're being safe. Thank you to Boulder Community Health. They held a booster vaccination clinic to give eligible Bvsd employees their Pfizer booster shots, and we had about 500 employees get their booster during the event, and so wanted to thank Boulder Community Health. As a reminder, next Tuesday, November 2nd, is Election Day. For the public, we do have 3 Board of Education seats that are up in this election, and as a reminder, the League of Women Voters and Impact on Education and District Parent Council held a candidate forum that if you were to access our social media sites today, you could see and hear from those that are running for those board seats. Board members, I had the great honor last week to join in a recognition of one of our very special teachers, Susie Nicholson-Dykstra. She's a physics teacher at Broomfield High. She also sponsors the engineering club. Does really great work on getting our female students interested in engineering. She was selected as a Voya Unsung Hero. She was originally awarded $2,000 as part of the award for her Physics for Social Impact project, which was focusing on incorporating engineering, design, and service learning into physics classes to increase student engagement and enrollment of female and other underrepresented students in physics. On Friday, I was able to surprise her because she came in second in, I believe, the state, and she earned an additional $10,000. National. The state, I meant the state of all the states, United States. So there you go. So it was really great to celebrate with her. She's going to use this grant to purchase a Glowforge 3D laser printer, and has some really cool ideas. It's just really great to honor her. What a fantastic teacher. Susie, congratulations again. I want to just finally to recognize our outstanding educators and administrators and recognize what a challenge this year has been. Board members, as you know, and some of you have been joining me, I've been going out and I'm having lunch at every one of our schools with all of our teachers and hearing just how hard they're working, the challenges they're trying to overcome. I'm so thankful. Our administrators, I was at Flatirons Elementary today, and our principal, Scott Bosel, was teaching 5th grade. The labor shortage is really putting us all in some challenging positions. But I say that because October is Principal Appreciation Month, so I want to make sure that we're appreciating all of our principals, all of our educators, and just thank everybody for what they're doing. In regards to substitutes, I do have some news that I'm going to break this evening. Board members, as you recall, several weeks ago, we became the highest paying school district for substitute teachers on Fridays in the state of Colorado when we offered $200 a day. That boosted our substitute pool from 300 something to 500 something. What I will be announcing today, that the Boulder Valley School District is offering a signing bonus for new and substitutes who signed up recently, a $250 signing bonus. And we've also streamlined the application process. We've taken feedback and we've heard that the process is too difficult. We've streamlined that process. Shorter application. If you thought about being a sub, the application turns you away, come on back. We'll sign you with $250. This is one of the best places in all of Colorado to work. And so we're just really doing everything we can to try to make sure that we recognize and honor our substitute teachers. Board members, as we get to the mid-year budget request, you can anticipate even more ongoing funds as we think about raising up our pay even more. Between now and then, we're doing everything we can to attract and retain substitutes. So $250 signing bonus. If you thought about it, then you forgot about it. Think about it again. Come on back to Bvsd. Appreciate all our substitutes. Appreciate all of our educators. And that is all I have for Superintendent's update.
Okay. Anyone have a question for Dr. Anderson? Anything? It's exciting news. All right. Well, then we'll go on to public participation. So we continue to meet in a hybrid public participation where our public speaks via Zoom, although we're meeting here in person. If you are looking to speak at the meeting, we ask that you sign up prior to noon of the day of the meeting. And we ask that you submit the request to speak during public participation form that can be found on the Bvsd website or by contacting the Board Secretary, Laura Schaefer. And so that would be, and that's the best way if you can possibly do it electronically. It's a little bit easier to manage the people who are signing up. The board, of course, respects the right of the public to speak on matters concerning the operation of the schools. We believe that public comment are critical to the district staff. That public comments that are critical of district staff, however, often cause unnecessary harm to those employees and to the education of our students. As a result, we prefer that members of the public share any criticisms of employees in writing with the superintendent, who is responsible for supervising all staff and then involving the board as necessary. If you choose instead to address a personnel issue publicly, please understand that the board does not endorse the comments of any speaker and reminds all who speak that they assume the risk of legal action by district employees in the event the affected employees believe that any comments about them violate legal standards. Okay, so to ensure that our meeting is conducted in an orderly manner, we ask that persons who address the board first confine your comments to matters that are germane to the business of the school district. Speakers on agenda items will be heard first, followed by those speaking to non-agenda items. Tonight, we in fact do not have any speakers on agenda items. Limit your presentation to 2 minutes. If we go over the first hour, public comment will continue at the end of the meeting. So we actually rarely do this, and we'll try to hear everyone before we do comments. I just think it's better to have everyone have a voice in the first part. So we'll extend it if we need to. And then, excuse me, if you run out of time or would like to share additional information, you may email the board. Recognize also that students often attend or view our meetings. We do have several student speakers tonight. Speakers' remarks, therefore, should be suitable for an audience that includes kindergarten through 12th grade students. And then you will see a yellow card when you have 30 seconds remaining, so you can see Laura's holding up the yellow card. At 10 seconds, you will see the orange card. Please wrap up your comments at the end of your 2 minutes. A timer will sound and your microphone will be muted. We do have a full lineup of speakers tonight, so please self-monitor your time as well to make sure that you get across the point you want to make at the beginning of your statement. So that's it. So our first speaker is Samantha McMillan. Okay. Then we'll move to Tangi Lancaster, who was given 2 minutes by Stephen Lancaster.
Hello and good evening. We are on stolen land. I'm Tangi Lancaster and the mom of 2 Bvsd students. Thank you as always for the opportunity to speak this evening as a concerned mother and voter who lives within this school district. I just want to first give a shout out to the Bvsd Communications Department. You've done a fabulous job of keeping the Bvsd website regarding the potential recall election up to date, complete with links to copies of the unsigned recall petitions since the very beginning of the recall effort. Much appreciated. While I've spoken at many school board meetings over the years, never has my name come up as much as it has in the past month. Things have gotten quite personal, and I'm sorry to see that board member Donna Myers isn't here tonight, but I'm going to continue what I've written as is. Ms. Myers, you spoke of being the recipient of false accusations and assumptions and character defamation at the last board meeting. How ironic, since a few minutes later, you then made me the recipient of each one of those things. No, you didn't mention my name, but come on, let's keep it real. Anyone who was paying attention knew exactly who you were referring to. You, along with 2 speakers from the past 2 meetings, one of whom is a recall petition committee member, have now caused my family to live in fear for our safety. We can't help but to be concerned about the possible violent acts that could befall upon our family and or our home due to you purposefully using your position of power and influence as an elected official to make such a careless statement. Friends have been reaching out to us about their concern for our safety after listening to each of the past 2 board meetings, and even more so after hearing your provocative words. We've all seen what happens when elected officials use their public platforms to incite fear in the public. It is clear to me and others that you and these 2 men are trying to bully me, intimidate me, as you do not want me to speak out against this recall effort that is based upon upholding white supremacy. My family and I respectfully request a public apology from you, Ms. Myers, along with a public statement that you are not encouraging anyone to take action against any one of us, our home, or our belongings. As an elected official, you are supposed to be responsible to the entire community, of which my family and I are a part of. How you can even possibly think that you are representing my 2 children in the school district at this point is beyond me. You have shown time and time again a callous disregard for their safety. Do not get it twisted. No, you do not and have not represented all Bvsd children during your term as you claim. Thanks again to the rest of the board members who are doing the jobs they were elected to do and for following the Boulder County Public Health Mass Order. The work you've been doing to ensure that our children stay as safe as possible and in school is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for your time tonight. And remember, as we heard so very many times in the 80s, to just say no to drugs, just say no to the lies and misinformation of the frivolous Bvsd recall effort, and do decline to sign.
Okay, our next speaker is Jude Landsman. Okay, our next speaker is Christina Leopold.
Hi, my name is Christina Leopold, and I have a child at Pioneer Elementary School in Lafayette. I'm here tonight to voice my opposition to the recall against 3 Bvsd board members. The recall is based on disingenuous talking points that, if followed, will actively endanger our students and our Bvsd staff. To put forth a premise that coronavirus is not a deadly pandemic, that our children cannot breathe using masks, or that they're not safer with them is absurd and defies all public health knowledge. To promote the idea that vaccines are created to control the general public using 5G, or to create hybrid computer humans is farcical and an insult to everyone working in public health. I support the Bvsd mask mandate and support vaccine clinics. When 5 to 11-year-olds are approved to be vaccinated, I urge the board to pursue all avenues to avoid this incredibly costly recall that will siphon funds from the education of our children. Please let us not allow a few misinformed zealots to hijack our public school systems plan and their future. I really want our board to focus on the real work that excites and drives the board, and work that drives our district forward and brings the best education to our children and supports our staff. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Jack Heimsoff. Is Jack there? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Jack.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly. I too share the idea that it would be nice to move past public health discussions in these board meetings. However, the reason why they are so top of mind is because many of us who are not actually misinformed, nor are we anti-science, nor are we misguided, have concerns. And our concerns are shared by thousands and thousands of scientists who are currently being vilified or having the threat of losing their license held over their head. The mandates such as masking and now vaccines. The FDA just had a panel discussion in which one of the voting members said the only way we're going to know if this vaccine is safe is if we just start giving it to kids. My child will not be a guinea pig anymore. She's already suffered having to wear a mask, and I'm glad that some people feel comfortable with them. Not everybody does. I'm not in a position of power and authority here. I'm not a white supremacist, and the charge that I am is not only disgusting and abhorrent, but it is a lie. I do not necessarily want to see anybody recalled. I would just like to see a better win-win possibility here. Perhaps if vaccines and masks were to remain voluntary, we would be able to accommodate everyone according to their needs. And I yield the rest of my time.
Okay. Kirsten Leslie, who's been given 2 additional minutes by Mark Leslie.
Good evening. Good evening. I believe everyone here tonight are for reasons both personal and community focused. Well, almost everyone. To that end, I want to share my personal story with you. In 2019, my then 12-year-old son was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. We went through about a year and a half of hell. At the height of COVID, he went through a stem cell transplant, and he developed a lung infection from one of the chemotherapy drugs. We know the cause was this drug because after copious testing, his oncology team confirmed it. Now, I'm happy to tell you today he is cancer-free. I can also tell you he is the bravest and strongest person I've ever known. The beginning of the school year and his first year in high school was a hopeful look to a return to normal life. Come August 10th, the school board announced masking requirements back in the schools.
Devastated, we called the school to see about an exemption. After a year and a half of cancer treatment, a history of asthma, and this lung infection that is present to this day, wearing a piece of cloth over his nose and mouth for 6 to 8 hours a day puts him at greater risk than contracting a virus that has a recovery rate of over 99%. However, the school had no clear direction on how to proceed, and on the first day of school, we were told by that school principal that they did not have a plan in place and he should attend school in a mask anyway. As a parent of a child who was diagnosed with a terminal disease, I can tell you that one-size medicine does not fit all. It never has. We learned how important it is to advocate for our child while doing the best to make medical decisions for him. And I hope the parents listening will never have to face the difficult decisions of mandated medical intervention that could threaten the health and well-being of your child. Or have you already? Where are the clustered randomized trials proving that masking works in children? Why did the CDC change course from its own research mid-pandemic? And why are we as a community not asking more questions around the masking issue? Is it because we are threatened school closures again if we do not maintain these mandates? Our narrative in this country is contradictory to most in the world. Many other countries, including the UK, follow the WHO's recommendation that says to never mask a child under 6 and to only mask a child under 12 selectively. There is simply no credible evidence masking children works. We are told over and over again to follow the science, but how many of you have actually read the science? Or have you just accepted what is summed up by TV personalities and op-ed articles? In this era of social media, is it the pervasiveness of tribalism that stops critical thinking? Would this community rather devolve into shame, blame, and demonization of the perceived other than to actually listen to someone who has differing perspectives in an effort to determine scientific truth? How does this serve public health? As a community, Boulder would be world leaders and change the narrative around this pandemic, or we could be. What are you doing with the $41 million in COVID relief money? What strings are attached to this money? As parents, we will follow these financial incentives to find these answers to these questions. Parents, do you feel something is wrong? Do you have that nagging feeling like we are going down a dark path? My son visited doctors 3 times in the month prior to the night we found the lump on his neck that led to his cancer diagnosis. We knew something was wrong, but we didn't know what. Listen to me now. Fear leads to hate. Tribalism leads to division and a willingness to blindly follow a narrative without scientific research, debate, and support.
Okay, our next speaker is Brian Coffey, who was given 2 minutes from Wendy Scipione, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
Good evening. We would like to highlight some of the information coming out about the experts the board is getting their guidance from. Judicial Watch has been granted several FOIA requests from the court. One set of records included communication records from the FDA, which indicate a potential operation of organ trafficking within the agency. Judicial Watch was able to uncover some of the redactions in the emails where the FDA requested, quote, fresh and never frozen fetal body parts. This is the same FDA who is improving the experimental vaccinations that this board and the health agencies in Colorado are supporting and recommending. The NIH, another trusted health agency, giving guidance, has a monumental public relations crisis. According to the Hill media outlet, the White Coat Waste Project, a nonprofit organization that investigates animal experiments, claims the following. Our investigators show that Fauci's NIH division shipped part of a $375,000 grant to a lab in Tunisia to drug beagles and lock their heads in mesh cages filled with hungry sandflies so the insects could eat them alive. They also point out that the dogs had their vocal cords removed so scientists could work without incessant barking. Another report shows the NIH spent $16 million since 2018 using monkeys, drilling holes into their skulls, implanting electrodes, and injecting toxins in the brain. I really hope these kind of experiments are not being done on humans, but I do know there's a lot more information about to be released that is more shocking than this. These allegations are inhumane beyond belief. These are the experts giving guidance and advice, folks. It's not just Bvsb listening to them, but also the politicians. Senator Steve Feinberg sent out an email last week stating the following. A group of anti-vaccine activists initiated a recall. Why? Because Bvsd's board listened to public health experts. He then goes on to say, it's time to show up for our board members who, under tons of pressure, are making well-informed decisions to protect students. This email blast from Senator Feinberg is already not aging very well. The FDA and NIH are making outrageously bad decisions, as stated above, when it comes to organ harvesting and horrifying animal cruelty. I would be curious to hear if the senator considers these decisions made by the FDA and NIH morally acceptable as Bvsb. And if he supports the experts giving guidance, I believe the people of Colorado deserve a public statement on this from him and Bvsd. The Bvsd and its outside political operatives are also not making very good decisions. There are multiple instances of harassing behavior and threats directed toward individuals supporting the recall, including cell phone stalking using spoof phone numbers, social media harassment, and smear articles. And the head of the school board running away at the farmers market this weekend after the authorities were called due to the actions of Ms. Marquis and other actors reportedly attempting to interfere with the signers of the petition, just so everybody knows. Are the politicians supporting the no recall involved aware of these actions? Why are the fine officers of the Boulder Sheriff's Department and Boulder PD so grossly under-resourced when Bvsd was just awarded $41 million they can't keep track of? Why does the Senate Majority Leader in Colorado have the need to be so outspoken in the school board recall? What else is this really about? A federal court just ruled Judicial Watch's lawsuit can proceed against Colorado officials to force a cleanup of state voter rolls. I had mentioned this months ago that this issue would emerge. You can take my comments above seriously or not. That is entirely up to you. The outcome to this situation has already been predetermined. Some of us came here specifically for this mission. Everything that has been done to humanity is being exposed. We have spent months since April trying to alert you to what is coming and all of this, and you disregarded all of it. In one response I received from a board member back in May, she stated, Dr. Urbina reviewed the materials you sent and deemed it disinformation. Where is he lately? I haven't seen him in a while. With your public actions and your crusty statements over the last year, you have truly helped the majority of Boulder and Colorado see the truth and through your narrative. And for that, we are ironically grateful. Welcome to the new earth. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Okay, our next speaker is Heather Mueller. Is Heather on?
Yes, hello, I'm here. Hang on, I have to turn down my other thing. All right. Okay, so hi there. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this recall. Just wanted to say to the board members and to all the parents who are listening that the reason this recall is happening is not because any of us wants to spend a bunch of money needlessly. It's not because any of us are racist. It's because we as a group of parents are not being heard. The board is effectively victimizing a group of parents who are worried about their kids. We are worried about our children. It seems though that like you only want to have a one-sided discussion. You've been unwilling to have a dialogue and learn what it is that's actually concerning us. You hear just a little bit and decide that you don't agree, and therefore we must be wrong, or we are radical anti-vaxxers, or God knows what other names have been made up for us. The point is, if you were listening to both sides, you'd understand what's really behind this recall. Nobody wants a recall. It's the last resort because nothing else is working to get your attention. On another note, the FDA is discussing mandating these vaccines for young children, and that scares the heck out of me. There's so much data out there to show that the vaccines are harming our kids more than COVID ever has. Yet if the FDA says that kids should have them, our Board of Health is going to parrot that to you, and you're going to follow it blindly. That does not make me feel like my children are in a safe place when they are in your schools. We elect you to make good and safe decisions for our children, and just because the Board of Health says it's so does not make it so. We expect you to make smart decisions. People who look at a situation and think about both sides of the issue, debate it with all sides, and then make an intelligent decision, aren't just parroting what other people say. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and hopefully we can have a better discussion next time.
Okay, our next speaker is Dane Cobble.
Oh, here we go. There we go. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so those of us who are seeking to protect our children from masks and vaccine mandates are doing this out of love for all of humanity, especially the children who are the future, in fact, the only future of humanity. We certainly are not white supremacists. That's pretty ridiculous. On the other hand, we do see real fear and fear-mongering, which are completely unnecessary, unhealthy, and unjustified. We see this fear and fear-mongering on the part of the board and their supporters, and we want to help you guys get out of that. Recapping data that I shared 2 weeks ago, COVID barely affects children. They don't catch it. They don't spread it. When they do catch it, they survive and they develop natural immunity. Their natural immunity and our natural immunity is absolutely superior to anything a gene therapy is going to provide. As Fauci said, in the decades-long animal abuser himself admitted last year that the asymptomatic have never been the causative driver of an epidemic respiratory pandemic. To quote him, in all of history of respiratory-borne viruses of any type, asymptomatic transmission has never been the driver of outbreaks. The driver of outbreaks is always a symptomatic person, Dr. Anthony Fauci. If somebody's sick, keep them at home. They don't need masks and they don't need a vaccine. Does the board dispute any of the data that I provided 2 weeks ago? I would like to know. Please answer this today. According to the Lancet and the data that I provided in the U.S., a total of 137 children died with COVID in the one-year period from February 3rd, 2020 to January 29th, 2021. Does the board dispute that the New England Journal of Medicine data set compared with this Lancet data shows that children and adolescents are 17 times more likely to die of suicide than of COVID, 17 times. A child is almost 8 times more likely to die of drowning than COVID. I want answers. Data also shows that the vaccines are actually leading to more cases and more fatalities. In the U.S., you can go to Bing, and all of this is going to be sent to the board. September 17, 2020, there were 11,260 cases a day. 1 year later, we're 4 times higher, 40,000 cases a day. As far as deaths, in 2020 on September 17th, there were 944 fatal cases. A year later, we're more than double that at 1,900. UK has similar numbers. These vaccines are absolutely not working. Do not mandate these dangerous gene therapies.
Okay, our next speaker is Nicole Perelman.
Hi there, thanks so much. You can hear my kindergarten, who's a kindergartner at Mesa, chatting away in the background. I just wanted to say, as a parent in Bvsd, with kiddo in Bvsd, I am so thankful for your leadership this year in terms of masking in the schools and keeping the kiddos safe. My kiddo has some special needs. I don't know what I would do if we were in a school district that wasn't following public health guidelines. I've just been so thankful that we have had these things in place that follow science, that follow the public health department, keeping our kids healthy, especially our little ones who can't get vaccinated yet. And I wanted to point out that this recall is just a waste. It's a waste of money, and it doesn't speak for the majority of parents or people in this community. And I think ultimately when you see the petition, and God forbid if we have an election result, you will see that as well. We don't feel this way as a community. Parents who have children in these schools stand behind you. They stand behind your leadership. And if you look at the folks who are behind this recall, it's very obvious. About half of them have no permanent residence in Boulder Valley, and the other half don't have kids that are school-aged. So it's pretty clear who's driving the agenda here and what's behind this. And by and large, these are not concerned parents with kids in the school district or currently in schools. Please understand that the majority of parents are extremely supportive of your actions. We appreciate your leadership. We hope you keep on doing what you're doing and don't get derailed by folks from outside Boulder Valley that have another agenda. Thank you so much.
Okay, our next speaker is Natasha Rigg. Okay, our next speaker is Sharon Procopio.
Guys, hear me now?
Yes.
Hi all. I'm just making Halloween pumpkin parade pumpkins with my third grader.
Hello.
We were calling to just say that I'm not in support of the recall. I think that it would be a waste of funds and our money to, I really want to encourage people not to sign it because I just think there's so many other uses for those resources for all of us, whether you agree or disagree with masking or you're concerned with other policies. I just don't see the use of this money going to something beneficial to our kids, which is what our schools are supposed to do. And that was the main reason that I wanted to call in. I really want to say thank you to the school board and everyone for everything that they've done through this long couple of years. And I just want to say, decline to sign. Please don't sign the recall. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Dorian Lancaster. Is he on?
You're here.
I'm here. Sorry. Hi, my name is Dorian Lancaster, and I am a 6th grade student in Bvsd. I want to start off by thanking the school board for keeping me safe for in-school learning. Thank you for following the Boulder County Public Health Department's mask order to keep kids safe and in schools. It's important to be in school because it's easier to ask questions and understand the teachers than it is to be online at home. People, I know this recall isn't just about masks. It's trying to uphold white supremacy. The people in charge of the recall effort are trying to get rid of Lisa Sweeney Moran, Vice President Kathy Gephardt, and most importantly, Miss Sweeney Moran and Ms. Gephardt, Richard Garcia, who I remind you is the only person of color on the school board and is representing the Latino community. I have learned representation matters. Masks are helping us end the pandemic by helping to not spread the virus. The more we all wear masks now, the sooner we can stop having to wear them. Like I said last meeting, there have been over 600,000 confirmed cases of COVID and over 7,000 deaths in Colorado as of this day. Does this mean anything to you? Before I leave, I just want to say again, thank you Bvsd School Board and especially Mr. Garcia for keeping students in school for learning and safe in school.
Okay, our next speaker is Roselia. Yep, okay.
She's online. I believe she's muted.
Roselia?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon to all. This Bvsd recall has to stop. I am calling today because I do not support this recall as a parent of 4 children in Bvsd and a longtime resident of this county. It is a complete waste of time and resources that could be used to help our children succeed in school. This recall was created for one purpose only, and that is to change the structure of our current board members. Richard, Lisa, and Kathy have been supporters of our Latinx students and community. They have done nothing wrong but always have our children's best interests at heart. Richard, Lisa, and Kathy are extremely supportive and understanding our community and we need them to stay. Basta ya. No al recall y enfoquémonos en la educación de nuestros hijos. Gracias por escucharme y tomar en cuenta mi voz.
Okay, our next speaker is Gabriel. Is Gabriel on? Okay.
Only based on conspiracy theories. As a student, I do believe in science and what our health experts recommend. Richard, Lisa, and Kathy have always followed through with what experts have recommended, and for that reason, I would like to see them stay as board members. I appreciate Mr. Garcia because he was a tremendous support for myself during a tough time in my freshman year. Thank you for your time, and let's get back to what we should really focus on, and it's our education. Gracias por escucharme, hoy y siempre, porque mi voz cuenta.
Okay, our next speaker is Brianna.
Good afternoon to all. My name is Brianna and I am a 5th grader. As a student, I do not support this recall. I have been so happy that we are back in person and nothing has changed, even if we have to wear masks. I still enjoy the time I spend with my teacher and friends. Richard, Lisa, and Kathy have always taken time out of their busy schedule to support students like myself and my community. These claims brought on this recall are wrong. Even as a fifth grader, I understand that what Richard, Lisa, and Kathy have done is to look out for our best interest in making sure we stay healthy. Real experts have said many times that masks reduce our chances of getting COVID. Please, we need to stop. I say no to this recall and let's focus back to our education. Gracias por su tiempo y escuchar mi opinión. Viva mi comunidad.
Okay, our next speaker is Elizabeth Fashing.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, board members. I'm here to reiterate my opposition to the recall of members Gephardt, Garcia, and Sweeney Moran. As I have previously stated, this is a waste of district resources led by irrational community members who are driven by hate, racism, extremism, and disinformation. Let me remind everyone listening that rational people do not argue against science and public health safety measures that keep our children safe in school. Rational people advocate for real policies that make our schools safer and more effective. For example, public policies that would eliminate the need for our kids to participate in lockdown drills. Better educational curriculums that emphasize STEAM topics and civics, which are clearly needed more than ever. Rational people advocate for school resources to be spent on things that actually make our schools better. The $650,000 that this recall could potentially cost the district could be used in myriad ways. Higher teacher salaries, free lunch and breakfast for all students, accessible technology, better wages for bus drivers and cafeteria workers, additional tutoring services, to name just a few. We must understand that those driving the recall are part of the conspiracy theorist movement that pushes a false narrative and is taking an alarming hold in our society. Although they are loud, we must not let the vitriol they spew or the gaslighting tactics they employ affect our decision-making or distract us from the issues that actually matter for our children. Say no to the recall, support our committee members that follow the science, and be sure to vote for Bvsd candidates that will continue to follow the examples of members Gephardt, Garcia, and Sweeney Moran. Thank you.
Okay, Sherlyn Ceruto.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. I had two agenda items today. One is no to the recall, and the second one is I would love to see opt-in vaccine clinics at the schools as soon as possible. I talked with Boulder County Public Health, and they said they weren't really working with the school districts. And I know there are factions that have existing mobile vaccine clinics in the city of Boulder, and it would be great to repurpose them to be at school grounds where we already have all the kids of the age that will hopefully be approved very soon. So I'd really strongly encourage the board to look at that. Regarding the recall effort, I also have two kids at the Bvsd school district, a kindergartner and a second grader. And my kindergartner almost died of the flu when she was 2. And so I'm very concerned, even though many children don't have strong reactions to the coronavirus, that she might be that 1% that will have a very negative reaction. So I have been very scared and feeling like I'm playing Russian roulette with my child every day, sending her to public school. And the fact that you allow masks is the one thing that makes me feel a little bit safer. But I am very excited for the vaccine to be available for them very soon. And I hope that we can get them as many kids vaccinated as soon as possible to remove that last barrier to their health during this pandemic. So I appreciate everything the board has done so far. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, Kim Woods.
Good evening, this is Peter Walters. I'm here to recount a incident that happened last Saturday morning at 9 o'clock.
I don't have this person on the list. Okay, thanks. Is there a Kim Woods? Okay. Why don't we move to Aaron Frost? Is Aaron online? Aaron, you're muted.
Thank you. I'm here this evening to share with you the horrific treatment I have witnessed firsthand of a candidate running for the school board seat. My wife, Kara, has experienced false accusations being levied against her from members of the school board, including but not limited to the sitting president. Kara has been accused of being part of the attempts to recall 3 sitting members of this board and a proponent of junk science. These matters could not be further from the truth. Additionally, we now have police patrolling our home because of the fear and intimidation that has been brought against us ever since she volunteered her time to enter this race. I would like the public to know of these things so they can question all sitting board members why they would support these issues, since none of you have commented against the abhorrent actions. To not condemn is to support. To sit on the Bvsd board is a volunteer position, one where members donate countless hours of their time to impact change for our children in this district. I would also question why these positions have been politicized and can take donations. In my opinion, the politicizing of our children and of this board is one of the greatest disservices we can do to our kids and future generations. As I mentioned before, volunteering should be just that. You give your time to help others and expect nothing in return. Second, it is important for the public to understand how the election process works. When candidates turn their packets in to show their intent to run, they are told they must meet with the union and the League of Women Voters. The union president is paid for by the district, and the League of Women Voters partners with the district to run their forums. Essentially, the district runs the entire election process rather than the taxpayers. The board should be ashamed of these actions, and the people should demand change. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Alvaro Torrico. And was there a giving of minutes here, Laura?
No, because they all spoke ahead of her.
Okay. Alvaro?
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time to the board. I can only imagine how much stress you all are in, and it seems that I continue to hear waves of this recall happening. As a single parent of a child in the Boulder Valley School Districts, I've been reading where rumors are now residents, and it seems families and parents and brothers and sisters, real people in Boulder, asking that Richard Garcia, Kathy Gebhardt, and Lisa Sweeney Marine be recalled. And I am curious why this is, why there are 15,000 signatures needed and so many residents fired up, taking action and ticked off at the board. As a parent, thinking 3 of the board members being recalled seems a bit concerning to me. I am of a Hispanic race, Latino, and continuing to hear people speak of white supremacy and pushing what sounds to be an agenda rather than true concerns, or using possibly their children. From a little bit of research I've done, it seems like Ms. Lancaster works for Richard Garcia, and I'm not into these political games, but I'm not really seeing how the correlation of these people calling in, defending those who are on the board, have really benefited the people whom it seems the board are supposed to work for. To be honest, nobody's looking to die from this COVID, but it seems that one side wants to push an agenda and not listen to the other. But with the board being placed on notice, I show that these 60,000 signatures that are needed are well on their way. So I'm curious where the board's headed.
Okay, our next speaker is Rebecca Morris. Is she on?
I'm here. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just want to express my support for the board for following local health policy and keeping our kids safe and in school. I encourage other parents and community members who feel the same way to decline to sign, and to also reach out to other community members and talk about why you'll be declining. I'll yield the rest of my time. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, our next speaker is Megan Boyle.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi. Hi, I'm glad to have this time. I really wanted to express that I'm super happy to hear that public health is such a priority for our board and for Bvsd. I've got currently 3 children in Bvsd, several with special needs, and their health is my top priority. And like a previous caller, I don't need to, quote, feel safe. I need our children to actually be safe. So removing SROs from the schools, masking and muzzling our children is a huge concern for me. Like others speaking tonight, our family listens to children, listens to our children like they do. We're very familiar with all the dozens of studies that identify the tremendous harm we do to our precious children by forcing masks on their little faces for up to 12 hours a day for several of my kids. The Board of Health and the Board of Education are not my children's doctors. These volunteer and elected people are not the experts of what to put in or on my children's bodies. The parents are. The doctors that we hire to look at all of their health needs are. It's my job to defend them from harm, which sadly the Bvsd board is spearheading without parental input and collaboration. The suicide rates have spiked unlike anything we've ever seen before in Boulder due to the isolation and lack of communication and human contact with other people because of schools and because of the mandates that we've seen all over, and seeing other people's facial expressions to give our children confidence. We know that daily headaches and concentration difficulties and the hearing impaired and children who have speech impediments are tremendously harmed by not being able to read lips, to not see facial expressions. We know that so many of these masks are filthy and never, if rarely, washed, and they get secondary illnesses from the filthy mask.
Okay, our next speaker is Luke Vernon.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I'm a father of 3 kids, ages 7, 10, and 12, and the husband of a former teacher in Bvsd. I have a master's degree, having completed multiple high-level courses in statistics and a bachelor's from Cornell University. The 4 important topics I want to speak about in opposition to vaccine mandates are transmissibility, overall risks in children, safety, and lawsuits. Transmissibility is now being found to be the same whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated. The CDC study found that, quote, there was no significant difference between the CT values, contagiousness of samples collected from breakthrough cases and other cases. UK's Public Health Service released data on 525,000 cases indicating, quote, there is limited difference in viral load, infectiousness, between those who are vaccinated and unvaccinated. A Harvard professor recently published a study on millions of cases across 68 countries and the US and found that vaccination rates were not correlated to lower case counts. In fact, researchers found that a higher vaccination rate had higher case counts, which speaks to new data coming out about how the vaccine is causing the virus to mutate around it, leading to higher infection rates among vaccinated people, which has also been concluded in new studies out of the UK and Israel. The overall risk of COVID to kids is extremely low. Per the CDC, since the start of the pandemic, just 362 kids under the age of 12 have died out of over 2.7 million cases, which is a survival rate of 99.997%. Also, per the CDC, 95% of deaths are with individuals who have multiple underlying conditions. There are more deaths per 100,000 kids every year from flu, drowning, cardiovascular disease, et cetera, et cetera. Further, an Israel study of nearly 900,000 cases found that natural immunity is up to 27 times more protective. Britain has recommended against COVID injections for the healthy kids because of the risk of adverse events. As found by a University of Illinois professor, there have been over 140,000 documented cases in U.S. of women experience changes in menstrual cycles. How can we put this shot in prepubescent age girls when we don't know how it affects them? And lastly, lawsuits are piling up around the country. And I think if Bvsd does enforce vaccine mandates, I think it should also be prepared.
Okay, our next speaker is Amanda Domenico, who was given 2 minutes from Blair Chandler. Do I have that right?
Hello, that's correct. Hi, my name is Amanda Domenico, and I have 2 children that are in the Boulder Valley School District. I unfortunately have to apologize. I haven't been following the recall event, but I was shopping at the farmer's market on Saturday when I was sort of accosted by folks that were holding signs like "Keep children in schools" and "Keep children safe." And I think that's something that we can all agree on. And so I decided to speak tonight because I tried to speak to those person. It turns out it's the head of the school board, and she could not answer any questions that I asked regarding the environmental impact of these masks. Has one been done? I mean, I was on a panel with KGNU regarding single-use plastics. And I realize that pales in comparison with some of the testimony that I've heard today about people that have children, they're concerned about their children, and they want to have them vaccinated as soon as possible and to have vaccine clinics in the schools. But I will say, if we're going to listen to science and not scientific superstition, we should go right to the horse's mouth. And in order to do that, you really need to look at a report that was done by the FDA in August of 2014 regarding mRNA technology and the shedding that does take place. I've heard so much today, I don't know how to begin because, again, I feel like the coyotes have been in charge of the chicks, and we all need to start paying very close attention to what is happening, and the hens and the roosters got to start paying attention, because if the head of the school board cannot answer regarding single-use plastics, how many masks are used in each of the schools, and if they cannot, they're certainly not listening to the science if they're considering doing vaccine clinics in schools. And so these policies, they're violating World Health Organization. And then I geeked out and went on Johns Hopkins University and looked at the actual cases by county. And Boulder County is one of, it's a handful of counties that are masking and asphyxiating our children. Out of 64 counties, only about 6 of them are doing it. It is a known fact that children need oxygen in their brains in order to develop. And so the parents were showing up at schools, were unmasked, breathing in the fall air, and the children, are being masked. There's absolutely no scientific basis for that whatsoever. And in fact, we, on the Johns Hopkins University, by counties in Colorado, we have the lowest daily intake of COVID cases. So everyone, and I don't have a theory, but everyone should really start paying attention as to why that is. What are the effects? Because the CDC's own studies, and again, I like to look at things from the horse's mouth, state that if anything, that if masks helped anything, it would help less than 1% of contagion. These children are asymptomatic. And most children are, and they have a 99% survival of COVID. So we're not masking them for their own good. And we need to pay attention to what is going on with the board. I'm horrified at the infringement on democracy that seems to be taking place. And I've, since become aware of various articles and testimonies here today regarding abuse. So I will be paying.
Okay, our next speaker is Heather Middleton.
Am I there?
Yes.
Okay. Just to set the record straight, because this should be all about transparency, Ms. Lancaster is employed by Richard Garcia. The current sitting board members have not been doing their jobs as school board members, and in many cases abusing their positions. As stated on Kara Frost's website, the school board members' #1 job is, quote, to provide local citizen control over public education. This means the school board should represent the citizens of the district, not just some of the citizens, but all of them, unquote. Do they not understand this? Let me make this crystal clear. It says to provide local citizens control the public education. The only board member who has represented their district and the community is Donna Myers. She is the only one who is listening, and to prove it, over 1,000 people have signed the Bvsb recall petition. I was made aware of this recall petition just recently. This recall would never have been initiated had the board done their job. They forced the citizens to do this because a large portion of the community is not being represented. Again, the school board should represent the citizens of the district, not just some of the citizens, but all of them. The Bvsd board recall is happening because they are not listening to the community, the very job they said they were going to do. This is what the recall really is about. Giving parents the choice. Translation, parents are the ones to make the best decision for their child. 2, making sure we have happy and healthy children. 3, demand action against sexual harassment issues. 4, protect the mental health and development of our children. 5, school safety, bringing back SRO officers, transparency and around financial incentives, and 7, family choice of their health decisions.
Okay, our next speaker is Kara Frost.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Kara Frost, and I'm running for the board position for District D. I've been in education for 26 years, and never have I had an experience with a board or a district like I have had in the last 2 months with Bvsd. Bvsd is investing millions in our new bullying program. My son at El Dorado Middle went through it today, and our very own leadership team is bullying me and citizens to the point of needing police protection. You should be ashamed. This is appalling and unacceptable. A complaint has been filed against Tina Marquis for violating board policies. The children of our district have witnessed this behavior. My children have witnessed this behavior, and their friends have witnessed this bullying. They are confused. I expected more. Tina, you should be leading by example. Tina Marquis and Lisa Sweeney are spreading lies about me and using their district platform to do so. I am not connected to the recall, nor have I ever laid eyes on the group who are running it. And I am not a junk scientist. Over my 26 years in education, I've consulted with dozens of schools, and I have never experienced a district being run like this. We need to change. We can do better, Boulder. We need your help. We're a community. You are the leaders of our district. You should exhibit the very behaviors you want to see in our students, rather than teaching them how to bully and cyberbully. Lead by example. Let the taxpayers decide who they want to vote for. Other parents are fearful to stand up and speak in our district because of the culture our board has created. School board candidates across the country are being protected by the police, and now so is my family. Our children are suffering, and this behavior only hurts our district more. We should be modeling how to respect one another and create a culture where our students and our community members are uplifted, valued, and supported.
Okay, our next speaker is Emily Lewis. Okay, and then our next speaker is Megan Sanders. Is Megan online? Megan, you might be muted. Is she still there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem.
Good evening. I'll start by saying I believe very strongly in the partnership between parents and the school district. With that being said, it doesn't feel much like a partnership, but a battle between what the Board of Education thinks is best for my kid and what I think is best. I could go on in more detail, but today I want to address the way in which the board members are conducting themselves. I would hope that any one person involved and the motivation to be on a school board is solely for the academic development for our children, but what I'm witnessing is a one-sided bias and bully mentality against those with different views, which is a complete contrast with what Bvsb prides itself on, which is diversity and equality.
Megan, are you still there? She left? Okay. All right. So the next item is board communication. Does anyone? Okay, Stacy, why don't you start off?
I prepared a statement that I'm going to read, so just give me a few minutes. I have been quiet for a long time, too long. I was hoping that by keeping quiet, we could focus on the work of the district during these challenging times. And believe it or not, our district has done a lot of good work since March of 2020, and Tina alluded to some of those things earlier. I am extremely proud of our district and what we have been able to accomplish during this unprecedented moment in time. However, I now feel compelled to speak out because what has been happening aside from the good work of the district over the past 18 to 19 months is not acceptable. First of all, contrary to recent reports, I have not been witness to any bullying within our board. We may disagree, but that is not bullying. That is healthy conversation about matters that we are all passionate about. Secondly, sharing public information about candidates, their views, their endorsements, and their supporters is not bullying. This is called sharing factual information and urging our community to make informed voting decisions. Now let me share with you what has been happening over the past 18 to 19 months. I'm only speaking for myself, but I know that some of my colleagues on the board have also had this experience. I have been called a child abuser and a criminal too many times to count. Our actions have been likened to what happened to the Jews during the Holocaust on several occasions. I have been told that I will be held accountable for crimes against humanity. I received a letter to my home that was not signed with no return address, which was meant to intimidate. One day, about a year ago, when our schools were 100% remote, I received 2 emails within 2 minutes of each other. The first said that if we don't return to in-person learning, when a student dies by suicide, the blood will be on our hands. The second said that if we do return to in-person learning, when a student or employee dies of COVID, the blood will be on our hands. A photo of the board was posted on a Facebook page with disparaging comments made about me and another board member about our appearance. I have received many emails that are laced with obscenities and name-calling. I am a volunteer. I do not have any political aspirations. I decided to run for the school board because I thought I could serve my community and make a difference for our students. I never thought this job would be easy. However, I did expect it to be reasonable and civil. There is nothing reasonable nor civil about how we have been treated for simply volunteering to help our community and following public health guidance. Thank you for listening to my personal story, and let's all try to be kind as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Kitty?
Thanks for sharing that, Stacy. I've also written a statement I'd like to make, but ahead of that, I want to say that I am horrified at bullying of anybody, of our board members, of people in the community, for people to need police protection because of threats from other members of the community is, like I said, horrifying. One of the criticisms the board keeps hearing is that we don't listen to parents, specifically the parents who disagree with the advice of our public health partners. I want these folks to understand that not listening and disagreeing are not the same thing. Many board members have made this point in meetings, and we continue to receive the same criticism. We have also received criticism from those who assume board members have not considered the information they sent us. I have had conversations via Zoom and email with some folks who have criticized us. I have seen some of what they have shared. I've heard what they have had to say, but I am not convinced. Regarding vaccination mandates, this has never been discussed at the school board, and I don't believe it has ever been discussed at the state or anywhere else. People spearheading this recall appear to believe that we should be doing only what they want. They seem to think we should ignore the majority of parents and community members who believe the advice of public health officials and want us to follow it. If we did only what the folks who disagree did, would there be a recall based on not listening to the majority? We can't have this. I understand that some parents truly believe, among other things, that masks are dangerous, who believe the district is somehow harming their children, and who believe the COVID vaccine is dangerous. I understand they're frightened for their children. If I believed what they believe, I would be frightened too. I don't know how many parents who are frightened for their children have pulled them out of school in favor of online or homeschooling. I do know that there are parents who, believing the worst, have let their children continue, and I don't understand why. Boulder County Public Health has issued a mandate that masks be worn indoors. According to the Colorado Attorney General's office, any person who violates an order may be subject to civil and criminal penalties. Violation of a public health order is a misdemeanor and can be punished by a fine of up to $1,000 and 1 year in jail. Individuals who violate an order may also be responsible for some of the costs of the health agencies in abating the cause of sickness and could have a state license, such as a restaurant or liquor license, revoked. Law enforcement has normal powers to address any criminal violations related to an order. The district is being encouraged to defy this order. I can't imagine sending a message to our students that it is okay to violate the law.
Okay. Anyone else want to make a comment? Lisa?
Thanks. I apologize in advance. I had things I wanted to say, which I am going to say, but I think given the nature of what we just heard, I'm going to add to that, so I apologize for taking up some time here. First, I want to echo what our superintendent said. The candidate forum, I strongly encourage you to watch it. I think the candidates presented themselves clearly, and I have no doubt that if you give an hour of your time to watch the debate, you will be able to easily identify the strengths and weaknesses of these candidates. I was so thankful yesterday to be able to attend the first CAPL meeting of the year in person. Really looking forward to the year ahead and seeing where we can take that. And I was grateful this morning to be able to present at the Aurora Institute alongside Amy Nelson at the invitation of Landon Mascareñas and CEI to discuss the DEI work of the district and the incredible success of the community engagement-based process that we engaged in during our SRO conversation and the work we've done since in the post-SRO planning. Halloween. Last year my kids were home, unable to trick-or-treat following exposure to COVID, and this year not only are they incredibly excited about trick-or-treating, but they are gearing up to go to a Halloween celebration at school. And I just want to give a big thanks to Boulder County Public Health for ensuring that our mask mandates and public health orders are making such a difference in terms of our return to normalcy. I wanted to thank Dorian, Gabriel, and Brianna. Always so fantastic to hear from students at our school board meetings, and I appreciate your support. We had a caller ask about vaccine clinics. We did do some of those when we had the high schoolers eligible last year. And it's my understanding, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we are working closely with BCPH as always to look at when and where we can set up vaccine clinics again when the new age approval comes through. I think I've worked hard not to use board time to talk about this recall election, but I'm going to say a few things tonight. One of our recall petitioners tonight called in to say that, quote, nobody wants a recall, but it's the only way to get your attention, end quote. I can't underscore enough the degree to which I think that's an abuse of the recall system, and that we are literally in the middle of a regular election in which the folks running this recall attempt should be competing publicly in a contest of ideas rather than attempting to sneak through a back door to try and foist an unpopular agenda based on junk science onto our school district. I want to respond to candidate Kara Frost's husband, who is clearly fairly confused about a few things, and I want to take a minute to clear it up. The only group that asks candidates to speak to the BVEA is the BVEA, which invites candidates to interview for an endorsement if they would like to. And as for League of Women Voters, they are a nonpartisan group that offers to help run a candidate debate and does not provide endorsements of any kind. I'm going to address Kara Frost as well. Kara, the same First Amendment rights you have that allow you to call into our board meeting to publicly campaign allow me to share my thoughts about the candidates running for the Bvsd board. Frankly, not only is doing so absolutely not bullying in any sense of the word, my role as an elected official not only does not require me to be neutral, but demands of me that I speak my mind on issues related to this board and the governance of our school district. I have been publicly clear that I do not personally support you for school board. And while I will not use my time here to go into this further, folks who want to hear more can find me on social media. That's it for me today.
Okay. Richard or Kathy? Richard?
Well, I too want to thank the people that took the time to make some comments tonight. But I want to thank Dorian and Roselia, Gabriel, Brianna, because they reminded me why I ran for the Board of Education 6 years ago. And it was to make sure that you students get the grade A education that you get through Boulder Valley School District, and that we, as a board, make a commitment to make sure that you're safe and healthy. So thank you, students, for your comments tonight. I appreciate them. And you're right, Lisa, there's so much misinformation going on that I want to make sure that people really, really understand. And if they need to, they can go to the www.elpasomovement.org website so that you can learn that I don't own that particular nonprofit, nor do I have Ms. Lancaster working for me. I work for the nonprofit. So please stop saying that, because it is the most untruthful thing you're saying. And it really gets to almost a little level of bullying here, because I think you're trying to scare the heck out of me, and you're not working, and it's not working, so please stop it.
I not surprisingly echo the sentiments of my board members here, and thank you for your comments. I just have a couple of things I'd like to say. First, I'd like to follow what Tina did at the beginning of the meeting, which is talk about some of the good work that we're doing in this district. Today, along with Superintendent Anderson, I went to Flatirons Elementary, which is my alma mater. It's a little bigger than when I went there 100 years ago, but it's still the same school. Houses are much different than when I lived there, I can tell you that. And just to hear the teachers' concerns and to hear Rob listening to the concerns, like we learned that one of our kindergarten teachers, somehow we've asked her to evaluate like 60 different aspects of a kindergartner, and she has 27 kindergartners, and my poor math skills didn't allow me to do all the things she was having to do. And for Rob to take that material and say, well, we'll look into this, and she felt heard. So thank you, Rob, for taking the time and putting this on your calendar to go out and listen to our teachers. I find it really helpful to hear how our policies are being implemented and what the concerns are. I think it's really challenging for some to understand the huge impact of declining enrollment on our district. And when you see it at a micro level, I know it feels different, but Rob has to keep reminding everyone that we have to look at the whole district and not just isolated instances of what declining enrollment's doing. So thank you. I was also able to attend the Champions of Education, which was a celebration put on by Impact on Education of many of the donors that allow us to have many of the great programs that we have. And so I just want to do a shout out to Impact and to Allison Billings and all the great work they do to support all our students. It was really a really nice event. It was on the roof of the History Museum of Boulder, I think it was, on a perfect night. So it was really nice to be able to do that. I also just want to encourage all of you who call in to not apologize for taking our time. This is one of the most important times of our board meeting is when we hear from our public. So you don't need to start off by saying, I won't take any of your time or I'm going to waste your time, because you're not. Whether I agree with you or not, we really do like hearing from you, and we really do appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us, even though it's still via remote. I just think that also provides opportunities for more people to be able to phone in. Then, two more things. One, I think for people listening, if you really want to get a clear sense of both sides of what's going on in the recall, just listen to the tone of the people who called in tonight on the side supporting the recall and the people who are on the side not supporting the recall. And I think you'll get a pretty clear sense of what's going on in the community that's dividing our community, and it's not being divided by any actions on this board. I stand by my board president, who has fearlessly and tirelessly, and I can't even come up with enough adjectives, led us through this pandemic to a point where we are able to have a Halloween celebration. So I just want to publicly say, thank you, Tina. I'll say it again. I'll probably get a little teary-eyed when it's her last meeting. But she didn't sign up for leading us through a pandemic. None of you all did. So thank you very much. And then finally, today, in the U.S. District Court, there was an order from a judge that I want to read part of it to some of you who don't believe that there's a virus and who don't believe that what we're doing is actually in the best interest of our kids. And for those of you who might need a refresher, this was an order from a court where he heard evidence from both sides and came down clearly on the side of the Douglas County School District and those parents of special needs kids who strongly believe that the masking requirements and the quarantine requirements were the only way that their kids could go to school safely. So this was not some hack judge who hadn't heard anything, who just came up with something off the top of his head, but actually heard testimony, considered it, and then wrote this opinion. So I'm just going to read a little bit of it because I think it's really important, especially for those of you who are angry at us for implementing a mask recall and who are angry at us for following public health, to hear what this court had to say. So he starts off saying, COVID is an infectious disease caused by SARS-CoV-2, a virus first discovered in December 2019. He then goes on to talk about how it's mutated and says the Delta variant is more than twice as contagious as previous variants. Then, for those of you who have followed what's going on in Douglas County, it used to be called Tri-County Health, then it was Bi-County Health when Douglas County withdrew, and now I'm not sure what's going to happen to Adams and Arapahoe, but Douglas County Health decided to try to go it on its own. And so as one of their first things, in fact the only thing they did, was they tried to exempt the school district from requiring masks. And what Judge Kane wrote is, this order is in direct conflict with CDPHE guidance. Within the first week after the public health order was issued, 4,500 parents submitted written declarations exempting Douglas County School District students from the mask requirement. Over 500 school district staff members also exempted themselves from wearing masks while indoors. I won't read you the legal standards because you don't really need to know that. But his findings to support his conclusion, I think, are worth hearing. What he said is that the effect of the public health order was to illegally deprive student plaintiffs of equal access to the school district services to the fullest extent possible. And I'll just read that again. If we were to not follow our public health order, we would get the same ruling from a judge that would say that we would be illegally depriving our students of equal access to the school district services to the fullest extent possible. The court then went on to say that the plaintiffs presented ample, credible evidence that disabled students face a much greater risk of harm upon contraction of COVID-19, such that meaningful participation at school is illusory. Then goes on to state that the defendants, in my opinion, not surprisingly, hardly address the issue of the limitation on quarantine protocols. He states, there is no dispute that the medical consensus is that reasonable quarantines must be required. And then finally, Judge Kane says, a recent study released by the CDC supports plaintiffs' assertions that mask requirements are effective in reducing outbreaks in schools. Again, I'll read that one more time since there seems to be some misunderstanding on this. Mask requirements are effective in reducing outbreaks in schools. They had a defense expert, but he provided no scientific evidence that universal masking in schools is ineffective or that such a mandate fails to reduce the risk to disabled students. On the other hand, the plaintiff's expert produced substantial evidence about the impact of masking. Finally, the court went on to say that when he was balancing the equities, he found that it was in the public interest to prevent the spread of COVID-19 among students with disabilities in Douglas County and to protect their rights to be free from unlawful discrimination. So, to be clear, the order was based on the documentary and testimonial evidence. The evidence demonstrates that the plaintiffs are at a significantly increased risk of severe illness and hospitalization from COVID-19, establishes that quarantine requirements for exposed individuals and mask mandates that permit medically documented exemptions are prudent and necessary to prevent the spread of the highly contagious Delta variant. These measures constitute reasonable accommodations for the plaintiffs, and the public health order prevents the school district from providing these accommodations to students. And he then issued the restraining order. So I think it's really important for our community to understand that everything we have done has been in the best interest of all students, all families, and our community. I stand by those decisions still. I stand by my fellow board members, and I'm proud to be serving alongside Ms. Marcos. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. I really appreciate you reading that, but I wanted to jump back in because you reminded me of something else that I missed, which is exactly that, to take a minute to say thank you to our board president for her consistent leadership and all that she does every single day to support our district and our students. I'm so grateful to have you.
Here, here, I agree with that. And I'm also very, very honored to have served with you for the last 4 years as our board president. You've done a magnificent job. Thank you, Tina.
Still one meeting left. It's kind of early. Anyway, these were great comments, and I really appreciate Stacy's comments. I feel so, that's really been my experience the last 18 months, just the incessant name calling, the horrible things that we've been called. It's been a really crazy, year and a half. So in any case, so our next item is an information item, which is the Culturally Responsive Disciplinary Planning and Board Resolution 2033 update. Here comes Rob Price.
Allowing us to get that straightened out. Good evening, members of the board, President Marquis, and of course, Dr. Anderson. We're not projecting yet.
President Marcus, can we take a quick break while they're getting set up?
Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. Are we ready to start our next item, everyone? Okay, let's try again.
Board President, Marquis, board members, I'm very excited to provide you the latest update in regards to our implementation of Resolution 20-33, Culturally Responsive Discipline. Before the team gets started, I just want to share with this board and our community how proud I am of the work that we've done in this area. I think that our work has been incredibly thoughtful. It has been very engaging. We have kept our community with us along the way. And so as they present today on where we are, please know and understand that other districts from across the country are watching how we've done this, are learning from this. I was in a meeting last week with several superintendents who were taking notes as we presented, the process that we use to get to the place we are. And so just very, very excited, very proud. And with this, I want to turn it over to Dr. De La Cruz to start our presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Good evening, members of the board, President Marquis. As Dr. Anderson introduced, we are providing you with an update this evening on our work in the realm of culturally responsive discipline, as well as the extended work around the Resolution 2033 and an update on that. This work, of course, is grounded in and an extension of our strategic plan work, All Together for All Students, specifically in the realm of Theme 4, cultivating a positive and inclusive culture. We're looking specifically at Initiative 6A, defining and putting into practice the culturally responsive principles and best practices that challenge inequity and bias. And then the work on Resolution 2033, specifically establishing equitable practices, policies, and systems to reduce disproportionality in student discipline and referrals to law enforcement. I have an illustrious and large team behind me who's going to provide you with an update on the work that they've been engaged in to get us to where we are tonight.
Good evening. You've seen this slide, I believe, a number of times, so this is just a reminder of where we're at with the timeline outlined in Resolution 20-33. So we are not going to focus tonight on the upper three things when we talk about board policy. We've highlighted that work several times, or the discipline data and the clear and transparent process that we're creating there. However, tonight we will focus on our work to expand culturally responsive practices district-wide, the steps we are taking to increase our capacity to manage mental health concerns. We'll give an update on how we plan to implement restorative practices amongst our schools. We'll highlight the steps that we've taken to increase our internal capacity to manage non-emergency issues. And lastly, we'll provide a high-level overview of where we're at with establishing MOUs with our law enforcement partners. So with that, I will turn it over to Amy Nelson, Coordinator of Equity and Community Engagement.
Thank you. Good evening. As Board Member Sweeney Moran mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity today to speak at an institute with teachers and leaders and board members from across the country. As Dr. Anderson mentioned, there are so many folks that are interested in the work we are doing. And so I wanted to bring that up because I was really able to sing the praises of the Bvsd board, Bvsd leaders, and this team in particular. And part of the reason that I wanted to speak it was really to share how authentically we have engaged the community in this process. So we started with the forming of the Equity Council, and folks were engaged in that process. We created the resolution, engaged folks in that process and giving us feedback on that process, both internal groups, external groups, our Youth Equity Council. We engaged parents, we engaged multiple groups throughout this process. We engaged community partners and youth voice in the hiring process, and we've engaged our community and our youth in the feedback that they've provided that led to the trainings that took place today. In addition to authentic school, family, and community partnerships, another part of our culturally responsive framework that aligns with this work is impactful professional development and learning. So as I mentioned, I've been a part of this process through my participation on the Equity Council, so since the initial stages. And today I got to spend 2 hours with our new school safety advocates, training them and speaking to them around some of our missions related to equity. And it was amazing. Trying not to get emotional. Like, I'm just extremely grateful for the work that we've been able to do together. The folks that I was fortunate enough to spend 2 hours with today are so excited, not only about their positions, but their role in upholding our mission of excellence through equity. So in addition to the school safety advocate trainings, we're continuing to work on creating a systemic plan for culturally responsive trainings, knowing that if we're going to do this work effectively, that we have to be doing this work systemically. And then continuing to work with our schools to build their capacity around this work. And then in terms of inclusive culture and climate, we're still working hard to implement the recommendations from both the Equity Council and the Youth Equity Council that the board heard last spring.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Anderson. I'm Tammy Lawrence, Director of Student Support Services for the East Network, and I'm going to provide an update on our mental health and where we are with that. We quickly got to work in June, and we hired 5 additional mental health advocates to help support this work. They're providing direct services to our students, to our schools, to our administrators. They're working with parents to provide supports and helping them navigate resources in the community. They're also going to be serving as our RISE facilitators to their assigned buildings. And they've been in that training for the first couple of months, and we've been actually launching some of our cohorts just recently. So as a reminder of that, RISE is our Resilience in Schools and Educators, and that's really our social emotional learning program for our adults, and really building that capacity of our adults and understanding what trauma and cultural responsiveness is and how we respond to students' behavior. It starts in the classroom and how we respond and support behaviors in the classroom, and really providing them a toolkit in this space. We have had our first DLT training in August, and we're planning to have another DLT training with all of our district leaders in January. We are implementing currently in 17 of our schools. 3 of our schools will be getting at the beginning of the year, so 20 in total. And we will be doing the student safety advocate training with them as well. They'll be going through the entire training so that we're all speaking the same language and we all are level set in the space. And then we're also working on planning a training for our transportation and getting them up and ready for RISE and building that capacity with all of our leaders. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Elton Davis to talk about our restorative practices.
Good evening, board. Dr. Anderson. Restorative practices is one of our nation's leading approaches for alternatives to suspensions, which has disproportionately impacted our students of color. The restorative process creates a positive culture and strengthens the social emotional skills between students and staff, while having a focus on changing behaviors. We are currently conducting an environmental scan in our schools, which will give us a better idea of where we are when we go to implement and train district-wide. So when we're thinking about this happening, we wanted to find an expert that was comfortable implementing and training on a large scale, and we were lucky enough to find that expert. Her name is Janelle King, and she is our new restorative practice coordinator. She is going to come up and give some more information on the positive impacts of restorative processes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Janelle King, and like Elton said, I am the Restorative Practices Coordinator with Boulder Valley School District. I've been here just a short 2 weeks, but I've learned a lot so far, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity. Restorative Practices is not another program. It's actually a framework for operating and focuses on how we can intentionally build healthy relationships and social capital, which is usually done mostly with restorative circles, and then also how we can address and repair harm after conflict has happened, and that's done mostly through restorative justice conferencing. So there's both proactive and responsive practices that fall under this umbrella term, restorative practices. And a large emphasis is really is talking about how we can embed these practices into schools' climate and culture through enhanced skill building, training, and coaching. Like Elton said, we've been conducting environmental scans in all of our high schools, and really to develop a better understanding of how schools are implementing and if they're implementing restorative practices, and then eventually we'll work through all the grade levels. We'll use the information gleaned from the survey and the scans to better inform our training plans and the needs district-wide. And a big piece is to really make sure that we have consistency across the school board in implementation of restorative practices. I will be conducting 6 hours of training on restorative practices for the school safety advocates next week, so I'm really looking forward to that, and just really excited to see where we can take the school district with restorative practices. Thank you for your time. I'm going to hand it over to Brendan Sullivan now.
Thank you. Good evening, President Marquis, members of the board, Dr. Anderson. My name is Brendan Sullivan, and I'm the Director of Safety. And I just wanted to, as a reminder, that we presented to 8 different stakeholder groups and asked for feedback on what was necessary to provide for safety and security in the district. And we asked for job duty feedback, training requisites, knowledge, skills, and abilities. And then we built our school safety advocate program with that feedback in mind, and with the focus on keeping our students safe and our staff safe in our schools. So what we expect from our advocates is that as part of the admin team at the schools, that they'll have daily interactions with the leadership teams there to understand what concerns there are around safety, security, the feeling of safety, and address those situations. We expect them to be actively engaged with all of our students and be innovative in the way they do that. 30% of our hires were employees in a different capacity, and the student feedback that we received from how they engaged with students previously in their old position was phenomenal. They're student-centered and are going to work collaboratively around transforming the culture and safety in our schools, understand what community partners are there, engage with those community partners to provide wraparound services to our students. They are also going to have knowledge in law, emergency management, and emergency preparedness. Our school safety advocates are our employees. They'll understand and work vigorously to support the needs of our students to ensure that our vision of developing our children's greatest ability is accomplished, understanding and supporting our mission, our values, and our goals. They will look at issues through a restorative lens, and like I said earlier, they'll work collaboratively with other partners, other stakeholders to provide the resources to best support our kids. They are not an enforcement mechanism. They are a plainclothes position. They're dressed in business casual. They have no enforcement authority, and they do not recommend, administer, or supervise any discipline that's handed out. We heard a lot through those community sessions and the feedback that we received on what was important as far as the training, and I'm proud to say that we've worked really tirelessly to make sure that we're accomplishing that goal. We've worked with our professional development team, and we're providing roughly 3 weeks, 100 hours of training to the staff before they even step foot into our buildings. This is some of the training that's initially going to happen, and it started yesterday when those employees came on board. And addition to this is we're also exploring ways to identify how our advocates can better engage with our Youth Equity Council so that they can see the perspective that they bring to what's important in safety and security measures for the schools from their lens, as well as working with our special education department to see how we interface together as well. And I will turn it over to Mike Grados.
Good evening, Board. Dr. Anderson. Again, thank you for allowing us to present this. Along this line around the hiring, let me just speak a little bit about that. We had 40 applicants total, And of the 40, we placed 29 in folders, and I think I've explained to you what folders are, those who meet the minimum requirements. And we interviewed 21 over a series of 3 days. That was quite a task, 7 each day, and they were on August 31st, September 2nd, and 7th. So quite a task, and with the interviews, including the stakeholder groups that you can see up on the list up here, was quite a phenomenal process. I think that others have alluded to. And also the input from all of our stakeholders around this job posting was phenomenal. This job posting really says a lot. It's different than any other job posting that I've experienced when you have safety advocates within your building. So I'm really impressed with that. And again, that was based on all the stakeholders that we had, you see up here. And then the process of the interview process with all of these stakeholders was great. I guess one of the highlights of that, I would say we had a member from the Youth Equity Council. Having a student on that was phenomenal. The feedback we got back from that was just great. Some of the comments that some of the interview committee said were phenomenal as well. You can see up here the candidate led with mental health. Basically, what they were commenting on is basically the profile that was created in terms of what we were looking for. So we needed to hire 11, we hired 10 at this point, and 60 of them are people of color. Okay, so very good process, and I was very proud to be part of that and facilitate that with a great committee. Now I'm going to turn it over to back to Amy Nelson.
Thank you, Mike. Dr. Sam Messier wasn't able to be here tonight, so asked me to fill in and talk about how we are measuring our progress, which is important. Like, we think we've done a good job and we think we've gotten it right, but we know that there's always room for improvement. And so it's important that we're continually seeking out ways that we can assess our progress. And so we are working through with our Bvsd partner, the Renee Crown Institute at CU, to determine metrics for how we can assess our progress. And we've been working collaboratively together. So we have our Bvsd team, and Crown sends a team over to meet with us. We've had lots of collaborations because what's important first is that we establish our priorities. What is it that we need to evaluate? And so we spent a lot of time discussing that. And I'd say, like, a huge shout out to Renee Crown Institute. They went above and beyond this, like, in addition to helping us with thinking about how we might measure our progress. They've played a huge role in the trainings of school safety advocates as well, and making sure that there's youth voice in those trainings. And so students on the Youth Equity Council spent time rethinking what does safety mean in our schools. And Renee Crown, their researchers took the time to code that data and figure out what are the themes amongst our students and how can we use that and share that with these school safety advocates so that they have the information they need as they work to build relationships with students. So we've really appreciated their partnership. Again, like, we're just in the phase currently of determining what are those metrics going to be, wanting to make sure that we do this thoughtfully, and determining what our priorities are, but we're looking forward to continuing that work with them. And I will pass it back over to Brendan.
So we continue to work on agreeable language regarding an MOU, and we had 4 bullet points here as priorities of the school district, and just identifying what that was our job of creating and maintaining a safe learning environment for our students and staff, the ability to apply preventative and restorative measures, and have a collaborative and cooperative relationship with law enforcement to address critical incidents and other concerns of safety in the school or the community. Our information sharing is really about FERPA, sharing information that impacts school safety, whether it's behaviors that occurred off campus, et cetera, and then notification of incidents to the law enforcement agency. Obviously, we have an obligation to report mandatory reporting events and also protect victims' rights, but also understanding that we can provide restorative measures even with criminal charges and apply school code responses by an administrator when it's appropriate in lieu of the low-level criminal behavior that we're talking about. And then spirit of cooperation talks about interviewing witnesses and what does it look like when law enforcement shows up to the school and we have a student who's a witness to a crime versus a student who's a suspect of a crime or a victim of a crime, and what does that look like? And just as a reminder that the feedback that we received was consistency in these agreements was really important for ease of application across all of our district with the other agencies that we're working for or working with, sorry. And then our emergency preparedness functions and making sure that we are aligned with best practices. And obviously, as events unfold in our world that impact our safety or feeling of safety, we always learn of either best practices or new best practices and how do we implement those in the district. And then updating our plans where before they may have had SROs inserted in certain positions. So just making sure that we're able to identify the right members of our team at the school or at the district to fill those roles and make sure that they're trained so that they can best react in the event of some situation occurring at our school that impacts our safety or the student safety. And then obviously collaboration with first responders and other emergency services or public health, et cetera, when we write and rewrite our emergency operations plan, which again is that 100+ page document that is really our playbook for how we handle man-made or natural disasters. And obviously this is an ongoing process that will continue well beyond tomorrow or the next day or next month or next year. That's the end of it, and we'll open it up to questions.
All right, thank you, and welcome, Janelle. That's a short period you've been here. Any questions to start off? Kitty?
So this may have been said, but I have a hard time hearing sometimes when people are wearing masks. What does EOP stand for?
Emergency Operations Plan. Okay. That's our district plan.
Questions over here? Richard?
Sorry about that. A couple of questions. But before I go to my questions, I just want to thank the team. I mean, it's a great team. And Rob, you put a great team together. And the framework that you presented, I think, is really well done. My questions are probably a little bit more in the weeds, so bear with me. The number of the school safety advocates we have, how many did you say hired already?
We've got 10 of the 11.
And there's 60% of them are
of color.
Of color. Can you tell me of that 60% that are of color, how many are Latino?
So we have 2 Latinos, 4 black, and then the rest are white. And Spanish speaking.
And then on the employee folders, or is that what you call them? Employee folders? How many Latino applicants did we have?
2.
And 2 were hired. Okay. That's good. 100%. The reason I'm saying this is because I keep getting reminded all the time that we have about 5,000 plus Latino students in our district. We also have the Latino students that are 3 times more likely to receive discipline, different types of discipline, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't need to remind you of that. And I guess I get a real concern that when we're looking for applicants that we don't really, I don't know, I'm sure you are looking for Latino applicants, but what other things could we do to try and get more Latinos in our schools? And that's just not for the school safety advocates, but that's across the board.
Yes, Board Member Garcia, you raised a really good question, and I guess the way to answer that is when we go out and recruit, we go out not only with our own website, as you know, but we're out at 26 online job boards, LinkedIn, Google Jobs, things of that sort to get people to apply, and we also reach out. In this case, of the number of applicants that applied, many of the people that did not apply probably did not want the requirements or want the responsibilities. So it's very, very difficult. And it's the same with all our other jobs who, we lack the numbers. And so why we go out and seek those numbers are, there's not a lot of the Latino community that are in that particular job position. And so we're still continuing to try that. It's not something that we're not ignoring. We're definitely paying attention to it. I'll give you an example. Just last week, we attended 3 virtual fairs. Those 3 virtual fairs all were from institutions that had high numbers of Latinos. So, and that's just not for jobs like this, but it's also for other jobs that we have. So we're seeking, but we're also being proactive even before the spring is here for the hiring season. We're already trying to build those pools. So it is an active thing, but I understand completely what you're saying. I'm frustrated because I wish we've gotten more. No question.
And I hear you, Mike, and thank you so much for that. But I guess I'm going to continue reminding the district that the highest number of kids of color in this district are Latino. And I'll keep reminding the district and everybody in here that the highest number of kids of color are Latino. Those are the kids that are in the achievement gaps. Those are the kids that are suffering and bumping into obstacles and barriers and stuff like that. So I just want to keep reminding the district that that's the problem that I see that we need to correct as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. But anyway, the other one is the metrics. Do you happen to have any idea at what point we'll get some idea in terms of what those metrics would look like and how?
To be honest, I don't think that we're at that place in the process. Like, we're wanting to be really, really thoughtful. And so I think that we've had 3 meetings at this point, just really bringing them up to date first on the work that we've done, right? Like helping them understand the process. They've spent a lot of time reading through both like our presentations, the various reports that have been produced. They've taken time to watch some of the meetings and we're bringing them up to speed first. So that I think that was our initial goal. And then we spent time, the last 2 meetings, determining like this is what we think that we're looking for, what we want to measure. And then they're at the point now, I think in our next meeting, we'll spend time talking about what those metrics might be and how we might measure them. So I'd say, I think that we're meeting once a month. Is that right? We're meeting once a month. So I'd say give us a few months to like develop those and develop them thoughtfully. It takes time, basically doing like a full study is what we're putting together with them. So it's just going to take some time. But also, part of what we want to look at is the work that we're doing now, right? The work of the school safety advocates, and they're not yet in schools. So it's just going to take a little bit of time, but I expect within the next few months.
Before you jump in, Dr. Anderson, will the metrics also include the work that the Equity Council is doing, that the work of the Equity Youth Group is doing, all of that wonderful stuff?
It's part of what we've talked about. I think that that's been the hard process of determining what it is we want to measure. But one of the topics that we discussed is have we, like I've said, that we have authentically engaged folks, but how do folks that were engaged in the process feel? Do they feel like we did a good job of authentically engaging them? So that's definitely one of the things we're talking about. So I think we're just at the point of narrowing that list down and determining which one. So I don't know if that's one of the ones that the group will decide to move forward, but it's definitely on the table and being discussed.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have just another quick question here, if you want to go ahead and. No. The last question that I have, because we've been getting emails in terms of what does this plan look like now that we don't have SROs, and I know that we're talking about that now, but do you happen to have an idea in terms of how quickly that will be solidified so that information can go out to parents?
we'll work on, we believe we've communicated that a lot, and we've been using these board meetings as updates to the community, but we'll continue to work on telling this story on what this looks like. So we'll make that a priority.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Richard was just saying about the communication to parents and having SROs in buildings, something we've had forever. And this is a significant shift, and just making sure that everyone understands how the safety is managed. And also, of course, highlighting the benefits of the restorative practices. So I share that same concern. So a lot of these discussions happen during remote learning. So we may not have had the wider engagement. So I think doing a stronger communication at this point would be a good idea. Any other comments or questions? No? All right. Thank you so much and for all of your work. It's tremendous. Our next item is a legislative update. Does anyone have a? Kathy does. Okay.
Just a quick update on the progress or lack of progress of the School Interim Finance Committee. The main topic this last interim committee was special education funding, which we've talked about a lot at the board table. And just in a nutshell, it was a presentation by Lucinda Hundley and the chair of the Special Education Consortium. And basically, the reimbursement amounts were set in 2006 and have never really even met the amounts that were promised in 2006. They've never grown by inflation. So there was a lot of really, in my opinion, concerning testimony about how the state's not kept up with any of the requirements, even as those minimal amounts that were set in 2006. Those amounts were not ever meant to reflect the actual costs of serving special needs students. I think they were set just like our base number was, which is pretty random and backed into. And the fact that we haven't even been able to fund those amounts without growing them by inflation was depressing. And at the end of the committee meeting, I think that the special education directors have been beaten down so long that they come and they just ask for please give me $5 more, even though I know I need 100. And is she a senator, Kirkmeyer? I can't remember whether she's a senator or representative from Weld County. At the end, she said, you guys just need to stand up and ask for what you want. Tell us what you need. And usually I'm not 100% aligned with what she has to say, but I was really excited to hear her say that, because we do need to just stand up and say, this is what it costs to educate these students with disabilities, and this is what we need, and it's time after all these years to actually have that conversation. So I'm looking forward to it. And, if we can get both Republicans and Democrats on this side to understand what the needs are, I think it'll be a positive session coming up. So I look forward to that.
Anything else on a legislative?
Oh, one more thing.
Oh, okay.
Stay tuned for what happens with redistricting. The Supreme Court heard arguments this week, so we should be figuring out what parts are going back to be reconsidered by the commission and what parts the Supreme Court's going to uphold. There are some interesting things going on, but I think it's important that we all pay attention to what's going on with that, because it will impact us for the next 10 years. And it is the first time we've tried this new process, and it sounds like there's, as with every new process, a fair number of bumps in the road, but I think we should pay attention and see what the Supreme Court comes out with.
Okay. Then our next item is revisions to Board Policy Regulation JECCR, Open Enrollment Procedures and Information. And this is sort of interesting. We look at this almost every year because we change the dates, and there are other changes made this year as well. So if you want to go over the changes.
Yes, thank you, Board President Marquis. So this regulation, as a lot of policy regulations do, seem to get longer every year, and it felt like it was time for a good pruning, primarily just for readability, and so that our families can really understand the way the open enrollment process works. So the bulk of the red lines were exactly that, just eliminating redundancies, simplifying and clarifying the language. We also had a number of changes that were made specifically by Peak to Peak. These are changes in enrollment preferences that are consistent with this board's discussion and focus on making sure that we have populations in our charter schools that reflect our overall population. So you will see that they added, for example, an income preference this year. And a couple of our charter schools added an exception or added a enrollment process to reclaim students who may have left the school or the district during COVID. And those are the primary changes this year.
Any questions? Kitty?
Yes, I have two questions. So in number 5, it says that acceptance will be sent. And how will it be sent? I know that, some people will email, but we know not everybody has email. So do we mail them letters? Do we call them? How does that work?
I believe our primary communication is email. This process, like many others, has moved entirely online, although we do have assistance and access for families who may not have that online access.
Yeah, and that's what I'm concerned about is because prior to that, it gave how do people without email do it? But I just wanting to know, how do people without email receive their notification? And especially since there's a time period for them to decline if they choose, and I wouldn't want them to miss it because they don't have email.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Sargent. I know that that is something that our open enrollment department thinks about very carefully. We did retain the language that says we invite parents who need assistance to work with the open enrollment office and to access computers that we have available to support our families. Mr. Sutter, do you know if our open enrollment office provides notice of the lottery results by some way other than email? I'm happy to look into that, Board Member Sargent, and to follow up with you.
Thank you. And I have one other question. The wait list is mentioned, and then it's mentioned later that somebody would be placed at the bottom of the wait list. So how is a position on the wait list determined?
My understanding is that all of our wait lists and applications, actually, I don't think I know that. Mr. Sutter, do you know that? I was about to say in the order received, but that's clearly not immediately true.
I believe how the system works is it assigns a random number to the applications, and that random number is sort of the sort order of the applications. And so whether you're receive a placement or go on the wait list, it's all based on that initial random number.
So that sounds like that's part of the original lottery, and then, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you so much.
You bet.
I had a couple of questions. I noticed that Peak to Peak has added alumni children for a legacy preference for the children of resident parents or guardians who graduated from Peak to Peak and without saying which district they live in. So I thought as a state we are moving away from legacy preferences in public school enrollment.
I think that we've seen some recent stories about that, Board President Marquis, so I do know that that's something that's being discussed, particularly at the college level. That was something that Peak to Peak added this year. You will note that they dropped the enrollment preference for children of board members or of founders of the school.
Right.
So I think they are making certain steps towards modern preferences. This has been something, candidly, that we are looking forward to negotiating with charter schools as part of their application and their renewal process instead of having to do it annually. And that will certainly be an item that we're looking at as we do that.
So what responsibility do we have as the authorizer? I think this is where it gets kind of tricky, is because we know that there have been all these letters sent out to charter schools who've had, and it could be a non-charter school, but there's been a lot of activity around discriminatory admissions processes in Colorado. So if we're saying it's okay, because Summit also has a legacy preference, giving students who are siblings of graduates of Summit, so that means they don't co-attend the school. In Bvsd, the preference is if the siblings are there together, because it's a matter of convenience for the family, not a matter of legacy. So the two schools stand out in that way. And what I just want to understand is can that come back to us if that's viewed as not being an appropriate way to give preference in open enrollment? Or would that go back to the charter school?
If you're asking if the question legally is who's responsible, I would say that the issue currently in the state around charter school admissions has to do with protections under federal law for students with disabilities. And that's something that we've taken very seriously as a district and are working with our charters on. The issue of legacy is not necessarily associated with that, are we actively engaged in discrimination now? It's associated with a conversation around equity and systemic privilege, perhaps. I think that is a deep conversation that needs to happen. It is not the sort of clear discrimination on the basis of a protected class like the disability actions that we're seeing.
Okay. Yeah, that's what was getting confusing, because I wasn't sure if the issue we had with one of the schools that received a letter, whether we had to get involved and use staff time to deal with that issue, or was it handled independently at that school site?
I can speak to that. So that the particular school who received the letter in that circumstance, under their contract, they do purchase basic legal services from the school district. We also, as the authorizer, as the local educational agency, irrespective of what our contract would provide, that accountability by the Office for Civil Rights is applied to the school district.
Okay.
So we share an interest with that charter school in assuring that we have an appropriate and non-discriminatory process. So we worked through that with district staff directly with that charter school.
Right. I mean, and I think the issue with legacy, for me, it assumes a length of residency that a person who is an immigrant would not have the same ability to get preference under that. But if that isn't considered, if you are new to the area, you of course can't qualify for that preference. But if that's okay, I just want to make sure we're not authorizing an enrollment preference that could get us, into some discussions later that we don't care for. So that's my only concern.
I would say legally, I do not think that these preferences are problematic, or I would have worked on that before we brought them to the board.
I just wanted to say I share Board President Marquis's concerns about this, and I think that maybe the impact of some of these legacies might raise some issues around the discrimination that we might want to look at. And I noticed that Summit did not change their policies to be in line with our practices. So I too look forward to, I don't know, Kathleen, when we can have these conversations with our charters, but their enrollment practices continue to be concerning to me. And I get that there's a difference between when they apply to be admitted and what it looks like, and then the actual enrollment. And so maybe when we talk about future board items, maybe we can talk about how many students actually, even once they're admitted, then never get enrolled because of some of these issues. So I think there's a lot of issues in there that we need to address, that this regulation just opens up questions and doesn't really answer.
I think the other way I think of it too is whether if this year we as Boulder Valley School District gave preference into Boulder High for the children of graduates of Boulder High, regardless of where they live in the state, would be an interesting preference for us to extend, and I don't know if it would go over very well. So that would be that's sort of like we sort of think, okay, well, why are we doing it this way for this school and this way for that school, and how would our community feel about that if we went down that path?
I do want to make clear that preference within the peak-to-peak list does say resident.
It does, okay, it does.
It does.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? Okay. So next we'll move on to our action items consent grouping. I'm going to read the list of items. 7.1 personnel items, 7.2 approval of minutes October 12, 2021 special meeting, 7.3 approval of minutes October 12, 2021 regular meeting, 7.4 approval of minutes October 19, 2021 special meeting, 7.5 acceptance of donation Douglas Elementary, 7.6 acceptance of donation Louisville Elementary, 7.7 acceptance of donation Southern Hills Middle School, 7.8 approval of the purchase of 5 new Type C electric passenger school buses, 7.9 contract with Procure Therapy LLC, 7.10 grant student services bullying prevention and education Colorado Department of Education 21. Are there any items board members would like to pull? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve this consent agenda?
So move.
Thank you, Richard. Second. By Kitty. All right, any questions? Kathy?
Rob, can you just talk, or this is probably Rob Price, about the electric buses? That's kind of exciting, and I just was wondering, is this coming out of our general fund? Do we have any grant funding for this? I know we've gotten some emails about doing electric buses, so I don't know what we'll do if we follow buses and we don't get this huge inhalation of diesel, right? I mean, hell, we know it's a school bus, but anyway, if you could talk about it.
Super, super exciting. So this is through the RAC grant, the Regional Air Quality Council. 1.9 million in total cost, but 1.6 is being granted through the grant. So it's about a cost of $300,000 to us. Now, as a reminder, these buses, I believe, are about $309,000 or $390,000. It's in the board packet. So we're paying $300,000. We're getting 5 electric school buses and a charging station with that. So super excited.
So maintenance of these seems like it's a pretty cool opportunity for I don't know, for our students to start learning how to maintain electric vehicles and whatnot. So anyway, I'm just really excited about it, and I appreciate you chasing down these grants, and I look forward to increasing our electric fleet of buses as long as we have drivers to drive them.
Yeah, I was going to say maintain and drive. Okay. Any other, Richard?
Yeah, well, I just have a question on the 7.10, the bullying prevention education grant. How guaranteed are we in terms of getting that grant? Do you have any feeling
There's no
for that?
guarantee. We'll submit our application. We have an amazing grant writer. B does phenomenal work. We've got a really great partnership with CDE. This would be our 3rd round of funding. We've done great work with the 2 previous funding and have a great foundation, and this would just really allow for us to implement across all of our schools.
Because it sounds like a real wonderful program that you're trying to continue.
Yes.
Now, my question is, if you don't get the grant, does that program stop?
No, we'll regroup and figure out how we can do things maybe a little bit differently, but we will continue. We've done a lot of work around our bullying efforts, and we want to continue that. This would just really enhance and ensure that we would have the capacity and abilities to help support our schools in a way with a facilitator from the district level.
Because it's a big grant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other grants have not been as large, so it's a larger grant for us. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? No? All right, Laura, would you please call the roll on the consent agenda?
Garcia.
Yes.
Gephardt.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Sweeney Moran.
Yes.
Zis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, our last item is agenda setting, and that's it. Anyone have any thoughts? Kathy?
Rob, I was hoping maybe during one of your superintendent reports you could give us an update on ERP, since I know we're postponing the implementation of it, just so that we can, it's a pretty big expenditure, and I just think it would be helpful to have an update on that.
I sure can.
Okay. Kitty?
Yes, I'd like to see sometime a discussion about paying school board members, because the legislature has approved limited payment for school board members, and So I'd just like to see us discuss that.
Anything else?
I second that, Kitty.
All right, I would like to adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn? By Kitty, seconded by Stacy. Laura, would you please call the vote?
Garcia. Yes. Gephardt. Yes. Marquis.
Yes.
Sargent.
Yes.
Sweeney Moran.
Yes.
Zis.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, have a happy Halloween.